Hello everyone and welcome to Rad Chat, the first therapeutic radiographer-led oncology podcast. So welcome to podcast number 35. My name's Jo McNamara and I'm joined by my fellow host Naaman Jolka Anderson. So a big thank you to our last guest, Shannon Johnson, who talked about her career and the College of Radiographers Industry Partnership Scheme research grant that she was awarded. If you haven't had a chance yet, please do go and take a listen. So I'm really pleased to introduce our guest for this evening, Yatman Tsang, who will be discussing his career today, advanced practice and equality, diversity and inclusion. So welcome to the podcast. I'm so glad that we finally have you on. You've been on my hit list since we started, so thank you so much. Do you want to start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your current role? Thank you so much. Do you want to start by telling the audience a little bit about yourself and your current role?
That's fine, Jo. That I would say that, actually it's my pleasure to be here. I tried to get on here for a long time, so finally it's my turn. So thank you for having me here today. And it's definitely, as I say, that it's an absolute pleasure to be here to join you and Naaman, on the broadcast. So a quick introduction on my role. So clinically, I'm employed as a consultant therapeutic radiographer at Mount Vernon Cancer Center. So in general, my role that actually is leading the specialized radiotherapy service at my current center. But I think later on we can go into details what actually the consultant practitioner that we expect to do. Academically, I hold associate professor title for the clinical academic career for the London South Bank University as well. So I think that is my try my best to pursue the clinical academic role, which I think, Jo, that you will know quite well, and same as Naaman as well.
What is a consultant therapeutic radiographer? People, even as therapeutic radiographers, sometimes don't really know what that is or what that means. So can you talk a little bit about that therapeutic radiographers sometimes don't really know what that is or what that means. So can you talk a little bit about that role for us?
Yeah, definitely. So the whole consultant practitioner concept started way in 2000 in Department of Health. So we try to utilize is about the expertise of the diagnostic and therapeutic radiographers to drive towards a protocol based care. So we're able to introduce proper skill mix. At the same time, we're going to lead about a consultancy to inventing, innovating, improving the patient pathway, based on our professional identity. So I think if I say the word consultant, a lot of time people first thing first, because we're in healthcare, they try to link us with medics. Some of it can be, the skill mix that we can try to provide is about, cover some of the medical fields that, usually the medics, they try to provide. But at the same time, I think if you look at the nurse consultants, consultants, physiotherapists, consultants, OTs, in that sense, what we try to do is, we will provide the clinical expertise in our own specialties, but at the same time, the consultancy actually coming out from our own professional background. So if you look at the Society and College of Radiographers for consultant practitioner, apart from clinical expertise, there's another 3 domains that we look after. Mostly that will be about our professional consultancy, leadership, and then research and education. So, all these 3 domains combined with the clinical expertise, kind of form the current job role as a consultant practitioner.
Who are like, that's my aspiration, I want to be a consultant, and they're all thinking, what do I have to do? So what did you have to go through to get to that role? And they're all thinking, what do I have to do? So what did you have to go through to get to that role?
To be honest, Jo, I think it's kind of, it's something that I would say that I kind of encountered by chance. And for my career, that actually I've been staying in the NCRI, the Radiotherapy Trial Quality Assurance Group, for a really long time. So for the majority of my career, that I spent about 8 years there. And then for my local cancer center, I think at that time, because of the kind of a specialized radiotherapy service, the demand is going up. So we knew that we want something that more innovative. We want to introduce a flexibility in the workforce. At the same time, we want someone to lead the service. So they advertised a consultant practitioner post at that time. So in that sense, that I come into equations that just by the timing, that is a good timing that I just really want to go back to the clinical role. So I think that is a kind of encounter. So I started my role in 2014. So I would say at that time, actually, I think the consultant practitioner role, they're more embedded in the diagnostic field, in diagnostic radiography, so mostly in breast imaging. It's something that is really common. But for therapeutic at that time, I don't think it's a common concept. So that, so by that time, we've got to quite a few that is a lung specialist or breast specialist. But for the role that I created, it's more likely that it's more generic in that sense. But I keep saying that, the college and the Society and College of Radiographers got a proper kind of descriptions about different scope of practices available in both diagnostic and therapeutic radiography. So, you can be site specialist, and I know that Yatman got a really great domain, about treatment review, that can be it, or it can be, breast, lung, or palliative for therapeutic. So for diagnostic, it can be plain film reporting, MR, ultrasound, all the clinical specialties you can be encounter in that sense. But at the same time, that we do expect that, the consultant practitioner will look at the other domains as well. So Joe, for your point, would be about educations, it can be training, it can be governance, it can be, service improvement.
I think it's interesting with the clinical academic route, there aren't that many really. I think it's interesting with the clinical academic route, there aren't that many really. What I've seen, I think when we spoke to Heidi Post before, it's actually lots of people make the jump to academia, same as like you did, Joe. But the clinical academic route is so valuable for our profession. I think it's definitely being recognised a lot more. Just as you said, so the physiotherapists, occupational therapists, it's very recognised in their roles, and now I think it's quite difficult to have time to do all four
pillars. I think it's a really good point, and I think I would say past 12 months I learned a lot. I think we're going into a kind of a space and time that we're trying to have one hat on. So, we try to say that, I'm doing research and they're doing research only. I'm clinical, I'm doing clinical only. I'm academic, I'm doing academic only. But actually the truth is everything should link together. So in some way that, I think people feel like clinical academics is always at the high level, but actually no. You can start with the undergrad, Joe, you will know. So it depends on how we're going to introduce that culture. So more like that we say that, actually clinical research academic is something that we need to do no matter what role that you're doing, just because of a professional identity. So, and something that I think recently that it's not a new concept. I think, but Joe, you will know that, we keep talking about competency a lot in radiotherapy. But it's not about competency, it's about proficiency. It's about, as a professions, we're a professional, we're not technicians. So if we want to be a professional, we need to have a proficiency. So it's not just about competency. So I think that concept, I think, need to come into the things that, but how can we have the proficiency instead of just competency? Because competency will stay on the level that is, maybe just as a skills level, but proficiency is the one that we're able to say, do you know what, that's my professional judgment. So it can be either your academic skills, it can be your research skills. All these skills, it give you some extra to do your clinical work. It's saying that, do you know what? I'm just not just following the protocol. I'm not just following what people told me. Actually, I have my professional judgment about the work that I'm doing. And this professional judgment comes from your academic and your research skills.
I think this is something in my role that I'm starting to really try and establish is, yes, you have protocols, side effects can be treated in specific ways. This is something in my role that I'm starting to really try and establish is, yes, you have protocols, side effects can be treated in specific ways, but there are times when you can't always bounce off a colleague. I mean, we have a very good kind of mixed team, so we have 3 nurses, 2 radiographers in the team, but we get to bounce off the registrars, which actually in some other departments you don't have that access if it's not a teaching hospital. So yeah, it's interesting when you look at it that way, that it is your professional judgment. You do have this skills and knowledge, you have got this job out of your own proficiency, competency, but you do have
to but I think, Yatman, that you were talking about, I'm going to bring in Joey now with her education hats on. If you look at our professional training compared to, because we deal with clinical oncologists, you look at the oncologist training, what would be the difference? It's about the clinical reasoning. So, for them, the situations they encounter is not something they're used to. You look at the SPR or senior registrar, a lot of information they need to digest, but it's about the clinical rationing, the clinical reasoning and clinical rationale they need to encounter. So it's not about they know everything, but it's about they know what is the safe thing to do to judge at that occasions and when they need to ask for help. So same thing as diagnostic or therapeutic radiographer, or same as allied health and nurses. We all got our professional identity. So a protocol is for something that for us to, shall I say, target 80% of our workload. We know that there's some 80% that we deal in and out. We are very familiar with. We know that they all follow the standard protocol. But for that rest of the 20%, the special ones, what are we going to deal with it? I don't think there's absolute right and wrong answer to deal with it. I think in radiography that, we try to do say, right, this wrong. But actually, a lot of clinical scenario,
don't we, in radiography,
there's no right and wrong. We're all in a grey area.
What we love of some of that inherent
we do.
Is about, where you're like, is it protocol driven? And it is about, actually, I do know what I'm doing, and I say this all the time to anyone I'm with who is maybe outside of oncology and doesn't know what the role of a therapeutic radiographer is, or what the training is to be a therapeutic radiographer. But I'm always, even though I help design the curriculum, bowled over by how much we actually teach therapeutic radiographers. Like, they're not just people who will go in and deliver radiation treatments. We essentially teach about prehabilitation, rehabilitation, long-term side effects, radiobiology, all of the physics. Like, they wonder as academics we're all stressed because there's so much content. But it is honestly, it is true that there is so much that we do teach, and not just about radiotherapy. It is obviously about cancer pathway as well. So it's really nice for that to kind of be acknowledged in roles like this, where you can support cancer patients, not just with their radiotherapy, but with their whole cancer pathway, really. Cancer patients, not just with their radiotherapy, but with their whole cancer pathway, really.
Yeah, Joe, I think you just bring a really, really valid point. As an educator, your job was so easy if I just tell you that, you only need to ensure that people need to follow step A to B to C, and then they got outcome D. That's not what education is about. I always say that I love protocol, but I feel like I do a good job for the training is for someone to change the protocol, improve the protocol. That's the whole point, So protocol, actually, even with advanced practice, that is a relative terms, Nowadays, we can't advanced practice in this country. It can be standard practice in Canada, or it can be standard practice 5 years later. But it's about how can we progress our professions in that sense to, ensure that we get what we need.
I think it's an interesting point about advanced practice. So obviously, being a consultant radiographer, that is advanced practice, but also as a kind of a band 7. So one kind of. I think it's an interesting point about advanced practice. So obviously, being a consultant radiographer, that is advanced practice, but also as a kind of a band 7. So they haven't really had a kind of lower, if you want, for advanced practice. So I'm quite lucky. Also, maybe not lucky, but having to, in a way, develop some competencies for my own role. So they haven't really had a competency package for treatment review radiographer. When I say competency package, we changed the title to learning and development pathway, exactly because of what you said. Because actually, yes, you can have all the competencies, but you don't get that extra about clinical judgment, reasoning, audit, research, blah blah blah. I can go on forever. All of those things from a competency, because there aren't many audit kind of courses, if you want, for, let's say, allied health professionals. They're more aimed at doctors who want to get into audits, for example. So I was quite lucky working with Carly Elliott, who's our quality lead in my department, developed it, and we presented it at LTRAP conference. So trying to look at it from not just the competencies you need to hit to be safe to be able to talk to patients and look after them, but so all the 4 pillars. So in research, if you do a leadership course, yes, that's good, but that doesn't always teach leadership. So how can you apply those concepts into practice? Or then education. So apart from just teaching students what review is, what are the extra skills that they could have so that, let's say, someone on the street has a cardiac arrest, what can they do and they actually can help without just standing back? It's those kind of things. It's interesting that other departments are trying to incorporate the 4 pillars in competency. But I think it's also quite hard because, again, like we've got...
Yeah, every number I say that the only comments I can make is one of the kind of the saying that I just learned about leadership. They say that leadership is about actions, not about positions. So, what you just say that actually define it really well. If we all be defined and box standard down to operational work, actually there's no innovation into that. So as you say about, I'm not saying that we should be our work, or should I say our professional identity, should not be defined by just the banding. But at the same time, I think it's important for us to be able to say that, actually, maybe my role that is to challenge the system. It's not about what you told me, what is the system, it's what I can do to improve it. And something that I don't know if you read this, there's a really good article talking about, clinical academics. They talk about, why the concept is so old and why we struggled with the kind of the clinical academics career in the healthcare profession settings. And what they describe is, they say, actually we've got a lot of strong people to be clinical academics. They describe the situation a bit like organ transplant. The organs are really strong, they're ready to go, but it's the body, the system may not be ready for them. So I think that is I always say use that kind of the metaphor to the students that I kind of teach university. So because clinical academics, they're trained to questions, they're trained to challenge the situations, but the system, the organizations, they may not be ready for them, just because they don't want the change. So then we've got these rejections. So then when rejections happened, the organs died.
Yeah, I'm so
and I think that is the kind of the sad things that happened in the past, I would say.
I will definitely credit you, I promise, but I'll definitely
use that. I love that.
That will go down. I will definitely credit you, I promise, but I'll definitely. Yeah, we will. We'll definitely.
I send you the link of the blog. I send you the link. It's a really interesting blog.
Day to day, what does your day look like in your role? Day to day, what does your day look like in your role?
So I don't want to use my gender card, Joe, that, as a boy, I'm not very organized. I don't even know that what my day looks like. So I use my diary quite a lot so to ensure that, I know exactly that, what is being scheduled. And then I share my diary with my team so they know that what I got on. So I got a job plan, and I wished I could have told you. This recording is, I say out loud, I wish I could tell you that I stick to my job plan every day, but the truth is it doesn't. So I do have clinics time that, about, my clinical role that to ensure that able to facilitate the patient pathway. So we do have a target to ensure that we're able to get the patient treated from the initial referral within 2 weeks. I think that is a target that we set ourselves to do for stereotactic body radiotherapy. So it's quite a rapid turnaround that we try to do that for the initial referral to the end of treatment within 14 days. So my job to try to facilitate that, ensure that able to introduce different radiographer lab procedures to facilitate that. But at the same time, for my kind of the national or international involvement in radiotherapy, that is whatever that comes in, I try to slot them in. And so you've asked me that, what does that kind of include? That, it can be different project. So, I involved in the advanced practice project, either with the Canadian group or that within the European Society of Radiation and Oncology, that, there's a really big, for ASTRO, that we've got a really big agenda for the therapeutic radiographers and the radiation therapists about the advanced practice, about how can we push the boat. So, that's something that I can't involve in. Other bit that I involve quite a lot, as a proud UK registered therapeutic radiographers, we support our professional body. So I involved in quite a lot of the society and college radiographers work. So, either we've got the consultant radiographer advisory group. So currently I'm the chair for that group. At the same time that we've got the Joe, that you will know that the approval, the accreditation board, so they look after, different education providers about different courses, either undergrad or postgrad courses approval. We involved in that, and also about the advanced and consultant practitioner accreditations to go through that board as well. So I think there's the two main things that I involve with the college.
That is perfect. That basically.
I don't know how to answer your questions. I can't really tell you.
Why? No, you are a very busy man, because you do so much, and how you just manage your diary in itself is pretty impressive. And I think it was Heidi Prost on her podcast who said that actually you're one of the busiest men she knows in radiotherapy. So the fact that you do so much is very admirable. But also also shows how passionate you are about your career, but also the profession itself. And I think that comes across whenever you present, and I'm sure anyone in the profession would have seen you at some stage presenting somewhere on something. But it's very interesting from that perspective. Yeah, you've been quite active on Twitter recently around EDI. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing at the moment and kind of maybe why you're in that sphere as well? What you're doing at the moment and kind of maybe why you're in that sphere as well?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that mostly the DDI bit that I touched is mostly on the race, I would say, for ethnicity. It all started is I got involved with our regional HP board. And so our regional East of England chief HP that, they have a call out. And I don't know, Yatman and Joe, that you heard about that for couple. They got a ethic minority strategic advisory group. So they got a call out, I think it's about 12 months ago, to look for a regional representative. So, and you know me that, something that I'm quite passionate about, which I can go through that later. So then I applied and I got into, kind of the East of England representative to that group for the ethnic minority, SAG for couple. And then all started is, from our regions that we, I think with Jenna's work, about for the next HP strategy, and one of the things they look at is try to look at, some regional feedback. So we did a regional focus group for our colleagues to comment about the next HP strategy. One thing that we found that is there is a need from our region in East of England to create something that is HP specific. And then, so we're able to talk about the ethnicity related issues. And so, I think both of you look at the data, from CAPO that you know that for band AA or above, for colleagues from ethnic diverse background, actually it's only about 12%. So it's just a general comment on that. We're not even diverted, or shall I say, we're not even looking into a specific, out of the 14 HP professions, what is that is about. So just within HP that, for the kind of the representations, of our ethnicity, at the leadership level is so low. So we know that there is a need for us to change it. So then I get into that space, and then so we set up our East of England HP Ethnic Minority Network. So I'm the current chair of the network, try to look at, provide a safe space for our colleagues to mention about the issues they've had. At the same time, we try to create some momentum and some actions, try to improve the definitely about diversity, workforce is needed. So, I would say that within East of England, I don't know if you heard about, recently we launched our anti-racism strategy. So there is something that a lot of good work coming out from it. So, and I need to say about, my colleague Roger Klein about no more tick boxes and your face fit. Those two documents, perfect. A lot of times that we all know with the kind of the momentum coming from the US, from George Floyd, and then we know that, Black Lives Matter. We know that anti-racism is something that is so deep down in our culture and also so deep down in our NHS professions. But at the same time, a lot of people see that as a tick box exercise. What does that really mean? And I would say that I'm still in the learning phase in that agenda, but we know that the concept is about, if we are in a leadership role, not being a racist not good enough. We need to be anti-racist. We need to encourage and then proactively point out the kind of the inequality that we've got, in our system. So that's why the next, the HP strategy will talk about social justice. We're not just talking about, equality or how equitable the system is. We're talking about, there's something that fundamentally is wrong in the system. I think something that I'm quite passionate about is a lot of trust is that, I got a whistleblowing policy. If anything happened, people can come forward. Then I'll say, well, hang on a second. Why do we need to wait for things to happen for people to come forward? Actually, the system is not right. The system should be set up to let these occasions to keep it to a minimal. We should not need our colleagues to suffer experience for them to come forward to justify, the inequality they encounter. It's something that deep in the system that we should avoid that to happen to start with. So I think that's kind of I would not say that I involved with the whole EDI agenda, but I think that, some about, the kind of the anti-racism, the work that I've been doing in the east of England around the HP world.
And have you had lots of engagement from people as part of that?
Yeah, so definitely we've got a lot of colleagues. They're willing to share, the kind of the experience and content. It's something that I never heard of, and I would say that I'm quite fortunate in my career that, I always got looked after. But I always say that, actually we should kind of self-fortunate that we only hear about racism and not to experience it. I think you to experience it, for someone to come forward to talk about it, actually is quite heartbroken. So I think it's something that, I think our colleagues, they're quite willing to really to share, the experience, and then we can learn from it, to say that, actually what happened. I think you will see that on the Twitter world that, that is the EDI, or should I say the kind of racism, that is something that we've been talking about quite a lot recently. But at the same time, that I always say that, as someone in the leadership positions, or, in a system level, maybe talking is not enough. Maybe we've done enough talking already. It's about what is the actions that we try to do, So I think one of the capital that, for the ethnic minority SAG that we try to do is we try to put down some solid actions. We want to influence. We want to, have a say in a lot of national strategy. So hopefully, for the next HP strategy, you will see the input from our capital ethnic minority SAG, about the input that we put that into.
That all sounds amazing. It's a lot of work, and you're clearly very passionate about it. I suppose something as well is about unconscious bias. That's probably an action, I think, for me, even probably my own way of where I've been brought up and what I've been taught by my family. It's something you do have to kind of look at yourself in a microscope, really, just be like, that all sounds amazing. It's a lot of work, and you're clearly very passionate about it. I suppose something as well is about unconscious bias. That's probably an action, I think, for me, even probably my own way of where I've been brought up and what I've been taught by my family. It's something you do have to kind of look at yourself in a microscope, really, just be like, well, actually, if I want to be treated in a certain way, I need to make sure everything I've done, I learn from it, and I make myself better, because you can't really be involved in EDI if you yourself aren't really following the EDI pathway. This is something I've seen quite a lot. It doesn't matter where, not even in the medical world, but okay, I've got a rainbow badge on, but that doesn't mean you're completely fully involved with EDI. That badge represents a lot of people. I understand that there's a lot to that as well, and obviously there's a few other campaigns always going on, but educating other people is one big action, but breaking down the unconscious bias, I think I'm still struggling maybe with other people, with my own experiences, that actually just little things that people think isn't actually racist, but it really is. And I understand it can be challenging, it's difficult to call people out on it, but you have to do it. And even as it's always uncomfortable being someone from person of colour, BAME background, whatever the correct term is, it's really hard calling people out, because it shouldn't really be our responsibility, but it ends up being that way.
I need to action something, and I need to do something, and I shouldn't rely on someone else telling me what I need to do or what I need to educate myself about and give me those resources and those experiences. I need to learn that for myself, and I know just as a result of doing the podcast, that's definitely something that I've kind of taken on board and started to appreciate much more. Yeah, did you have to do a bit of kind of self-reflection when you started working at that level? Yeah, did you have to do a bit of kind of self-reflection when you started working at that level?
I definitely learned a lot through that level, that and that's something that I recently learned quite a lot about compassionate leadership. And Joe, I think, and Yatman, as well, for our professional progressions, that we build up that confidence when you chair a meeting. But what I learned the other bit, that actually in a leadership role in these settings, actually when you learn to be vulnerable. Being vulnerable is something wrong with it. Being vulnerable actually make you compassionate. Make you able to feel, and then try to, ensure that we look after people. And then, something that I keep writing down and keep reminding myself that, for any meetings, any conversation, any discussion you have with your colleagues, students, or your patients, just be kind and be respectful. I think there's a basic human interactions that we should all have these two principles with us. I think that's what I learned a lot, in that sense that, because at the same time, when you chair a meeting or you chair, a conference, usually that, you try to ensure that you're on time, bring in some professional, not arrogance, but you provide some professional confidence. But in that settings, we don't know. And the things that more that I talk to people, that I just realize how little that I know about the whole agenda. I think that's the interesting bit. And I think the other thing that, one example that I would say that, I think Cyril may talk about it, just about the terms, BAME, BME, ethnic minority, or maybe we should not use the word minority, maybe, minoritized, all these words that, that you just come into, the whole learning camp that we're able to, absorb and evolve around that, but I would say one thing that is, at the moment, the system still make people feel like they need to change themselves to fit in. And it's not just us, I talked to some of my colleagues that, they feel like, from Asian background, do you know what? You need to study hard. You need to do well. You need to do better in the academic world because that's what you need to prove yourself so you're able to fit in. Why? But we all got told when we were a kid, you need to, study harder, then not to say that. I don't think my mom is, the tiger mom, but, as a Chinese parents, they would say, yeah, you need to do well, you need to get, ensure that you get A for your exams and everything. But that is kind of the culture. And otherwise you're not going to fit in, you're not going to get a good job. So you feel like that, when you come from that background that you have to work, extra hard to ensure that you get what you need. But I think that is something that hopefully we're able to change with the future generations.
I think similar experience for me. If you don't work hard, there's a big backhand in it for you. So that kind of discipline was something I was always taught. I think it's interesting you said about terminology. There's another thing. So for me, some people might not agree, but I don't like the way curry is called curry. That takes away from all of the different types. I think similar experience for me. If you don't work hard, there's a big backhand in it for you. So when you call it a curry that kind of discipline was something I was always taught. I think it's interesting you said about terminology. There's another thing. So for me, some people might not agree, but I don't like the way curry is called curry. That takes away from all of the different types of Indian, Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan cuisine there is. So when you call it a curry house, it's not a curry house. And actually, most of the times when you go to an Indian restaurant, it might actually be a Bangladeshi person. That's quite common in some places.
But that is extremely important, the point that you just pick out, I think is about we're addressing that, something that is different. So ways that we've got different, and the kind of ethnicity that are able to list when we fill in the form. But when you look at religions that, or we keep talking about, one of the things that when I talk to, and Janice quite a lot is about, travelers. They don't even have that to be looked after. And then now recently we've got a few momentum going for the, for sexuality, for LGBTQIA plus. But there's something that we're still working towards for the protected characteristics, because everything that count, in healthcare, you were not able to, have these diverse populations in our workforce. We're not able to look after the patient need when we can't represent what actually the population that we need to look after.
When you put the tunic on all your scrubs, that's something that stands for, right? The NHS. There are 70 plus nationalities, everything. You represent everyone once you put it on. And it's difficult to do because in some areas in the country this has come up in so many different themes that you don't always have a diverse background of patient cohort or even like colleagues. And actually some colleagues who might be from a when you put the tunic on all your scrubs, that's something that stands for, right? The NHS. There are 70 plus nationalities, everything. You represent everyone once you put it on. And it's difficult to do because in some areas in the country it has come up in so many different themes that you don't always have a diverse background of patient cohort or even like colleagues. And actually some colleagues who might be from a protected characteristic or from a different community, they might not want to move further away from home just because of what their family says. That's another difference that is. know, Joe, you've come across it through
that isn't personalised care.
Sheffield Hallam
And I think
University and
just
stuff like
asking
that.
the questions, nobody can be expected to know everything about every protected characteristic. I think, definitely you can educate yourself better, but that isn't what everyone is saying. It is essentially going, do you know what? Ask the question, be inquisitive. How do people like to be referred to? Is there anything that we need to know about to help ensure that your care is as you want it? And that takes time. So, from a workforce perspective, we need more workforce to be able to ensure that we can offer this personalised care, and that's probably throughout the oncology pathway. And don't get me started in all of what we do need, but I think personalised care is fundamental. Would you kind of agree, Jan, in terms of where maybe as a therapeutic radiographer listening might go, okay, so there's lots of things that I need to do, but what is it, do you think, that's most important if people were to take something away from this podcast and the work that you've done? What is it, do you think, that's most important if people were to take something away from this podcast and the work that you've done?
I think, Joe, that I think you just mentioned a really key word about, the whole personalized and identity. I think sometimes that, I think I'm really proud to be a therapeutic radiographer, but that doesn't define me. So, so naming that you're talking about your, treatment review role, that's not only thing that you do. So, I always say that, don't let a word to define who you are. I think for my whole career that I would say that, I'm proud to be a therapeutic radiographer, but I will never say that, the work that I've done just because of my professional background, actually the work that I've done because I have something to contribute. So I would say that, Joe, that you just mentioned a really key point, for our radiographer colleagues is, radiography, we're, one of the 14 AHP, and around with the nurses, midwives, we make a majority of the workforce within our healthcare. We work very closely with the medics. But all these terms doesn't define who we are, So Joe, that you got a broadcast role, you got an educator role, you got your society and college radiographer roles, and then you got your family roles. All these make up as an individual. So I would say that that's the important thing, And if we talk about my whole career, the one thing that I would say that I don't think is a good thing for people to do. Do you have a good work-life balance? That's important. I think is something that will keep you going, and then and don't make people make you feel guilty for having some family time or having some your time is important. So work is work. At the same time, your personal time for your self-reflections and to a bit of self-care. There's something that another saying that I learned a lot is if you can't look after yourself, you can't look after other people. I think that's a very important thing that I would say that try to do. It's not like I'm doing very well, but here you go.
Are there any other hints or tips that you would advise anyone listening? Yeah. Are there any other hints or tips that you would advise anyone listening? Yeah.
I would say, don't be scared or don't be afraid to knock on the doors. It's something that you're interested. Go to find out more. Just because people told you you can't doesn't mean that you can't. So, but I'm not saying that, so locking the door, there is an art of it, which I learned quite a lot. Sometimes you lock it hard, and sometimes you need to lock it gently. And sometimes you need to go back, run away and come back again for that. But I think it's about, but if there's something that you really want to do, explore it, engage it, embrace it. Don't be scared or just be told that, oh, that's not for you. That person can't judge you. You're the one telling yourself that what you want to do and what you can do. So I think that's the important things.
Give that out to all the AHPs in the country. So that was Yat advocating for knock and run. I think. Give that out to all the AHPs in the country. So that was Yat. So thank you all for listening to
our knock and run.
Today have been myself, Jane McNamara, and my colleague Naaman Dr. Anderson. A huge thank you again to our guest Yat. Head over to our YouTube page to see a live recording of this podcast. If you're utilising this podcast for CPD purposes, consider the reflective questions posted, along with the links to resources and literature that we've discussed, and to receive your accredited CPD certificate, please complete the Google form linked with the podcast. So our next guest to feature will be Claire O'Neill, who will be discussing her treatment journey and role at the charity Copperfield. So thank you for listening. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you, Yat. So thank you for listening. Take care. Bye bye. Thank you, Yat.
Thank you. Thank you.